Guys, thank you, all of you for watching. This is Mayor Shawyn for Mt Vernon, first Cyber Town Hall. This is a great thing because we get a lot more participation on Cyber Town Halls than actually many meetings of the council. Mayor, thank you for taking the time and to speak with us.
Absolutely.
Well, we don't have much time, so we're going to go right into the issues.
Okay.
Normally, this type of meeting is how am I doing type of things. But we're not going to go that route. You only been here for about 28 days.
Yes,
So
including weekends.
Including weekends. So we have to give you time to get things in order to give you that how am I doing type of interviews.
Absolutely.
But Mayor, you have done certain things. Can you talk about it?
What certain things have I done? Well, I mean, we've put in place an incredible public safety commissioner, our Commissioner Glenn Scott, who was a retired police lieutenant here in Mt Vernon. He retired back in March of 2015, who had a stellar career while he was here in the city of Mt Vernon, overseeing all types of units from investigations to detectives to emergency services to the training division, support services within the police department. He was well respected, well regarded, not only inside the police department, but definitely in the community. People saw him as someone who was very focused on community, had relationships with the businesses, with the schools, and so bringing him back as the commissioner and the top cop here in Mt Vernon, I think was a really, really great move. Under his leadership, they've put together a stellar discovery unit because, as of January 1st, each police department has to be able to respond to the DA's office with any body camera or any information that is being used in an investigation and a prosecution to the DA's office. And so he's come in and he's put Sergeant McKinney over the discovery unit. And while I was away last week at the United States Conference of Mayors, I got a phone call saying that our discovery unit is doing very well. This is a new initiative, and within that very short amount of time, Sergeant McKinney, and our Lieutenant Charlotte Neal Young have been able to put together a good group of people to make sure that our police department is in compliance with some of the newest regulations that have come out.
So now we have a police commissioner that actually has experience in policing matters.
Well, definitely. He has experience in policing matters. He has experience in leadership within the police department
So the morale is
many
good
years.
within the police
The morale
department?
is increasing. There are lots of things that we need to fix. The morale has spiraled for a long time in our police department, and so this is something that he's working on improving. He's met with the DA. He's met with some of our state and our federal law enforcement partners. He's cleaned up a backlog of investigations and paperwork. He is a person who values community policing as well as civilian complaint processes. So,
Mayor, I don't lose track. When you say cleaned up a backlog of cases, what does that actually mean? Does it mean it was purged? Or does it mean it's working, you've resolved it? Because it's only been how many days since he was?
Yeah, but if there's paperwork that has sat for months, I mean, this is a gentleman who's coming in on the weekends and staying late until the evenings to process paperwork. We heard under Acting Mayor Wallace, so there were investigations, there were this, but oftentimes paperwork and charges hadn't been filed. Everything doesn't need to be sent up to the DA's office. If there are abuses taking place in the police department, then you sit there, you investigate them, and you file the charges, you issue whatever discipline needs to be taken care of, and you move forward. Civilian complaints weren't necessarily being received. They were being discouraged. And so he made sure that civilian complaints are being received so that he can look into civilian complaints and address the police. I mean, if they're legitimate civilian complaints, then you provide training and or discipline. If they're not legitimate civilian complaints, then you have a response back to the person who put the complaint. But, just some of the systems were not moving, and he is getting those things moving.
Now, Mayor, I know you for many years.
Yes.
from the time of Dwight. We had sometimes our disagreements, but that's normal. That's normal. But now you're here. And I remember talking to you in the past, and social injustice, it's something that you took to heart.
Yes.
Something that was always important to you, regardless if you are the mayor, in government, or whatever. Something that you took it very serious. How is that going in Mount Vernon? Any complaints about police abuse, issues with the community, the bridge between police department and community? I'm sure that through your leadership,
absolutely,
that will be fixed.
That is, you know, that was my first appointment. My first appointment was my police commissioner, someone who I felt understood the importance of crime prevention. And then, you know, we have to work to prevent crime. So he's been encouraging, proactive. And so we have quite a few officers in our police department, like our officer Kareem Lloyd, who's one of our school resource officers, who's been doing a program down at the Turner Middle School, and said, look, I will do this. I'm not looking for overtime, and I have other officers who are willing to help me reach out to some of these kids who want mentors and who want support. Can I work with other like-minded officers who want to volunteer? Not who want to get overtime, but who want to volunteer. Commissioner Scott absolutely said yes. That's been encouraging. Our officer Linnell Jones, who's working in the youth detective division, you know, she has a group called the Flowers, and they've been doing community outreach. Our officer Sophia. Our officer Sophia is over at Yonkers Community, at the YCOP, the Youth Community Opportunity Program. I think we're having some technical difficulties.
Guys, stay tuned. I'm sorry, I apologize.
We're just stabilizing the camera.
Hold it here, hold it here, hold it here. Don't move it quick. Technology is not perfect, Mayor.
No, it's not, but it's okay. I have a show also, so I know sometimes things go wrong.
My apology, guys, but you guys know that technology don't always function the way it's supposed to. So once in a while, it happens.
It happens.
It happens.
It happens.
So we were talking about the police.
So yeah, so you know, prevention programs. We have our Dave Clark, and we call him, you know, Doc Cop, and he's out there in the community doing a lot of community outreach and working with our Mt Vernon Youth Police Academy. So those are some of the prevention programs. Coffee with a Cop, you know, partnerships to outreach to the community, going to neighborhood association meetings. Our Commissioner Scott has been asked to go to some neighborhood association meetings. He's showed up along with our Deputy Chief Sexton and our fire department. So our first responders have been out there speaking with the community and making sure that they're accessible. We're putting together a major neighborhood association meeting for March, where at least 10 of the neighborhood associations within Mt Vernon will come together and share their concerns with our police, our fire, our DPW, our EMS about community safety and prevention. And then we'll follow up with them in May about what the results are.
Now, Mayor, since we don't have too much time, okay, we can, we have to move
Go
along.
ahead.
But you mentioned something that I want to pick on, overtime.
Overtime.
Overtime, it's a problem, especially when it's unnecessary overtime. We know about some overtime abuse in the past, not necessarily in your administration.
Not in my administration.
So how are you dealing with it? If there is no overtime abuse in your administration and you only been a mayor, you know, after oath for 20 some days, taking off weekends and holidays,
Mhm.
and that stopped. And before, it was an excessive amount of hours in overtime.
So
Are you-
let's talk about, again, people like to present things in generalities. So Con Edison, we have a contract with Con Edison. When Con Edison opens the ground, you have to assign an officer to be present. That's part of Homeland Security. If the ground is open, you need an officer
That's
there.
paid by overtime,
But that-
by Con-Ed.
But oftentimes we didn't differentiate. We'd say, oh, our overtime budget is this. Like say it was 500,000. Well, if Con Ed paid us back 300,000, then we're talking about the bottom number. So when we've presented overtime numbers to the community, we've never differentiated between what the city is responsible for and what Con Ed or maybe a third party vendor was responsible for. I think it's very important to differentiate between the two because not all of that overtime is being paid by tax levy dollars. There was a lot of overtime being used for special events, community events, and those are fine if you're doing community events and you are charging your partners. Anywhere else, if an organization comes in and they want to do a special event, they have to pay fees. They have to pay fees that include DPW and cleanup costs and fire and police overtime, and those fees have to be charged. Unfortunately, here in Mount Vernon, there was a practice of not charging people fees. You could do concerts, and you did not pay the fees for police and fire
Taxpayers
and
paid for
DPW,
that then?
and taxpayers were footing that bill. And so, our permit usage will require, this is the amount that it will cost to use the fields, this is what it will cost for police overtime, DPW overtime. These are the real expenses to the city, and if someone wants to come in and do a concert, a festival, then they have to incur those costs, especially if you're charging and potentially making hundreds of thousands of dollars on an event.
Correct. If you're running a business, then you should pay for the expenses
You
of that
have to
business.
pay. You can't just walk away with the profit, and Mount Vernon holds on to the
And
expenses.
taxpayers pay
That's
for the
bad
expenses.
business.
But that's good for them.
But it's not good for
For the
Mount
city.
Vernon, and I'm not here to represent those people. I'm here to represent our taxpayers and our businesses.
Correct. Now, Mayor, not long ago, I think maybe about 2 weeks ago, there was an announcement of a $618,000 grant that came for the people of, to the city of Mount Vernon.
Yes.
Now, was that your doing, or was that the prior administration's doing? Because you were just.
Oh my goodness,
Well,
that was the prior administration's doing. This is a project that began probably over a year and a half ago under Richard Thomas. That application was submitted even under his administration. Absolutely, under his administration. We will be here to implement it. I'm not going to take credit for something that I didn't do.
But you see now, Mayor, I'm not saying that you did,
Mhm.
okay? But some people of your administration trying to project that as something that you did. Why aren't you talking about the 600 and some $1,000 that came? Well, we didn't.
Well, guess what? You can apply for things, and Mount Vernon has applied for things in the past. But people have to have confidence in the leadership that is there once they award that money.
So you think that
The application was there, a lot of the work had been done, but the announcements came later. We've had conversations, we had a Cities Rise conversation this morning, I believe, and they came and they met with us a few weeks ago before the final announcement and the final awarding of the money, and they were very concerned about who would be leading the project, that there had been so much change and there had not been stability in government. And so they sent the leaders of this project here, and they met with myself and my administration. They understood that I was committed to leading this project, that the money would be used wisely and fairly, and that I would serve as the champion to drive a culture change. And after that, we received the award.
so we talked
So the
about
process began, but the process
trust-
was not completed, I guess, until the trust was
the trust in the
earned.
leadership
Yes.
to conduct the business in
Made
the
a
proper
difference.
way
Absolutely.
going forward.
Absolutely.
Now, Mayor, we know there is a press conference coming up tomorrow,
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
Talking about 3 fire trucks
Yes.
that are coming to the city.
Mhm.
I was here a few months ago
Mhm.
when the first 3 fire trucks arrived.
No, it was only one fire.
Was
truck.
it one?
Yes.
And there were others that were supposed to follow. I guess those are the 3 that are coming up.
Well, it's only 3 altogether.
It's
There's
3, so
only
it's coming 2 coming
Yes.
now.
Mhm.
Now, the reason those 2 additional trucks did not come was because the controller was not releasing the funds.
She was not releasing the funds. The funds are HUD funds. These monies for the trucks come back from Community Development Block Grant money from 2012, 13, 14, 15, and maybe a little bit of 16. And this is money that was unexpended money that's been culled together and drawn down from HUD so that it can be transferred over to the Urban Renewal Agency, who would then cut a check to purchase these trucks. That money was sent here months ago. It was drawn down. It was held onto by the Comptroller. The backup documentation had been provided by our Deputy Commissioner Sylvia Bolivar, as well as our Commissioner Darren Morton. It was not honored. The Comptroller said that the paperwork was deficient.
Was it?
No, it was absolutely not deficient. She took the money, she turned it back and returned it to HUD. HUD was absolutely shocked and amazed. She wanted to know that this money was going to be a gift. It's a grant, and it was money that was advanced to the city of Mount Vernon, advanced. So we would not have had to cut a check to pay them without already having the money within our bank account. And so you can't say that something is reimbursable when the money's been advanced to you. And so look, I have been working with HUD and 26 Federal Plaza probably since December 1995 when I started my position here in Hopper. And so Vincent Hom, who is one of the regional community development directors, and Lisa Lockley, I have a 25, 27-year relationship with them, and we reached out to them, sat with Commissioner Morton, sat with Commissioner Bolivar. They continued to pull the paperwork together. They continued to pull the paperwork together, even more and more paperwork, and went back and forth with the Comptroller until she found a way that she was satisfied. HUD just never understood why we sent the money back. This is money that was allocated to our community. It's part of a formula grant, and they gave us permission to expend it on these expenses for the fire trucks.
But you know, Mayor, when, you know, for the last few years, we've been hearing problems between your office, not your,
The office of the
but the
mayor.
office
The
of the
office of
mayor.
the mayor, yes.
Okay? Not your office of the mayor and the Comptroller. Not paying for this, not paying for that, holding monies here, holding payments for your own employees.
Yes.
Okay? How is your relationship with the Comptroller? You think that she can actually create an issue that prevents you from doing?
Oh, she's already doing that.
Please tell us about it.
So this is, you know, this is not a pointing of fingers. I started coming around City Hall back in November and meeting with different commissioners. As part of my transition, I met with the Comptroller. I sat with her around the budgeting process. We talked about, you know, some hires that she had not processed yet, some concerns that she had. You know, not being mayor, I couldn't really speak to those things, but I saw that, you know, the same challenges she had with Thomas are the same challenges she had
You
with
were
Wallace.
aware of the problems,
Absolutely.
even though you couldn't speak on it, but you knew about the
I was aware
issues.
of them, absolutely. I mean, I met with the commissioners here for 6 weeks. I was in City Hall pretty much every day from about 9 to 5 and later, meeting with commissioners and preparing to ramp up to take office. Not interfering with government business, but becoming knowledgeable of the issues, the challenges, and then going back and sitting with my team to see how we would tackle them. You don't wait until day one to figure out a game plan. I am a planner, if I am nothing else, and I'm strategic. And so I needed to get a grasp of these issues, and you know, those were some of the concerns that we had. Worked with the Comptroller even on the budget, and on the 15th when I presented the budget in the Board of Estimate meeting, she said, look, this is a budget that I worked on with the mayor, and I think it's a good budget. It's a fiscally responsible budget. We worked on it together, and we're presenting it. Literally within about another 10 minutes, she said that I was corrupt, I was illegal, I was unethical, and I was no different than the people before me. And since then, she's basically cut off all communications with our office. We have had to revise the budget and change some things. We have tried to invite her to participate, but she's not communicating. We try to send memos to her, bring memos. She won't receive the memos, so we have to scan memos and email them to her. Every one of our commissioners have to make appointments to go down and bring in invoices, paperwork for people that they're hiring or terminating or transferring. And so it's very difficult. I would say most of my commissioners would agree that 20 to 30 and some days 40% of their time each day are spent just trying to satisfy the comptroller, who continues to move the touchdown line. As soon as you think you've satisfied her questions, there's a new one, or the rules change. So we've been asking for the rules of engagement, your policies and your processes and procedures, and we just can't get a clear answer.
Mayor, to me, this sounds like deja vu. I heard this story before, actually in this very same room, with Mayor Richard Thomas, with Mayor Andre Wallace,
so I can
and
tell
now with you.
What will be different about me is
Please.
I met with our DPW workers. Many of them have been missing pay since October. We have one gentleman who worked not only his 80 hours, but worked some overtime and was paid for 8 hours. This is not a glitch. You cannot say that DPW, police, fire, every department is deficient or defective in the way they put in their time. The system itself is deficient and defective. And so we've been trying to work to resolve these issues. I went down to DPW this morning to speak to, because it was, most of the guys, they're guys down there, they're men. So I spoke to the men, Damani Bush, who is our Deputy Commissioner of DPW, has been working with payroll all week to see if there were concerns or fixes that we need, because we cannot continue to expect our staff to come to work and them not get their paychecks. We're not just talking about overtime and differentials. If you showed up at your job on payday and got paid for 1 out of 10 days that you worked, it would be very difficult for you to continue to show up. And if this happened payroll after payroll after payroll, it's a defective system that we're using. We are asking the comptroller to use this as a attendance system and not a payroll system, because it does not work for many of the departments, and namely, specifically, police, fire, and DPW. These are people that are out in the field, and even our unions have paperwork in with the courts to say that it's very difficult for them to use this. Some of our police were not paid. We have officers, we have probationary officers who are in the academy, and they were not paid. They were not paid. I know some of them had not had full paperwork because Mayor Wallace swore them in. Their oaths of office were not signed. We pulled all of that paperwork in. We supplied it to the comptroller. They were not paid. We're waiting on paper checks to make these individuals whole. But every other Friday, we're sitting around the building on pins and needles trying to figure out how many people are not going to get paid for the work that they have legally done.
Now, Mayor, is the problem the system or is the problem the controller? Because
it's a combination of both.
It's a because for what I see, it's not just payroll issues.
It's a lot of issues.
It's a lot of issues.
It's a lot of
receivables, payables.
Yes.
It's an array of issues.
We have vendors that are not being paid, not just 30 days. Look, I've run a company for the past 15 years. I've had, to oversee a chief fiscal officer, accounts receivables, accounts payables, payroll. There are systems that you have, and you might have to have workarounds to deal with the system if there's challenges. So with the payroll system, if the payroll system is not picking up the proper punch-ins or punch-outs or overtime, most systems have a back door where the commissioner, the payroll timekeeping person can go in and make adjustments, to correct it and then submit it to payroll. You do that and you submit it to payroll and it's still not addressed. Right now, our fire commissioner and our deputy fire commissioner had the ability to go in and input the hours for the fire department. That access has been cut off. 2 of the fingerprint boxes or the Chronos boxes where you go and you actually put your fingerprint in or you punch in your PIN code. We have 4 firehouses. 2 of those firehouses, those boxes are not working. So if the boxes are not working at the firehouse and the deputy commissioner or the commissioner, neither of them can go into the system and make sure that the hours are put in put in properly, and you don't pay people, you cannot blame the workers, nor can you blame the commissioners. So, look, I'm not one, I've asked people, don't show up screaming and hollering at the Comptroller's office, because that's just gonna make Mount Vernon look dysfunctional. But
Well, that's the perception.
It is, but we need to come together, and we need to document our concerns, and we need to reach out to the state controller. We need to reach out to whoever we need to on the state level, because the system is broken. And if we need someone who is competent and capable to come in and do an auditing of not only our finances, but the systems, to show us what we need to do to fix them, then that's what we're gonna need to do. We cannot have people coming to work every other week and hoping that they're gonna get paid. We can't have people waiting to see money in their bank accounts because of direct deposit, and the Comptroller has decided to cancel their direct deposit for the week.
Well, Mayor, impeachment is the word that seems to be going on nowadays. Maybe the Comptroller needs to be impeached.
We do not have the ability to do
We
that
should
on the
have.
local level. It has to be addressed
Yes.
on the state level, and we will provide the proper information to give those who need to make those
Because
decisions.
the people of Mount Vernon
deserve better.
deserve better. Okay, all these things going on with the Comptroller, not just with your administration, with the priors, and the Comptroller is the common denominator.
The common denominator. I'm not going to say that there weren't other challenges with
There
people
are.
who sat in my seat, but what I can say this, there's a difference between fiscal responsibility and terrorizing the financial processes of this city. You are holding the finances of the city hostage. You are hijacking the system. This is not right. This is a problem. This is a problem. It needs to be fixed, and you can call it whatever you want to call it, but you're actually costing the city of Mount Vernon money when you do not allow probationary firefighters to be hired, and we have 11 vacancies. We have 11 vacancies, and they were prevented. Mayor Wallace was prevented from bringing in a new recruitment class of firefighters, okay? And so you have 11 vacancies, and now that's mandatory overtime. We have NFPA standards. There are national fire protective standards as to how many people you have to have on duty each shift. And so since you have 11 vacancies, how do you make sure that you're meeting your minimum standards? You have to provide overtime for firefighters who are going to make more, and then you say that there's overtime abuses. But if you're preventing the commissioners from hiring people that there are clearly documented vacancies for, then you're forcing overtime, and on the other end you're crying wolf. So this is what I said a few years ago about someone else who worked here in the city of Mount Vernon. There are certain people who operate and function best in chaos. You have people who are arsonists, who will light a fire.
We did have a fire. Didn't we have a fire here?
Look, I heard it. I saw it on the news. I wasn't here whenever there was
But we
fire.
know about it, right?
But when I'm not talking a little fire. I'm talking about a functional fire. You light a fire. You cause a problem. You sit back and you watch it spiral out of control. And then you almost turn off the hydrant so no one can properly respond to it. And right when it's almost down to the ashes, you come in as the firefighter and you say, look at me, I'm rescuing the day. That just sounds like a narcissist to me. And that's what the experience has been with this Comptroller. She's setting fires, and then she wants to fix the very problems that she's created.
But at the end of the day, Mayor, the people of Mount Vernon
are being hurt. The taxpayers.
Yes, exactly.
The taxpayers.
Safety are putting at risk.
Safety. We have vendors who will not deal with the city of Mount Vernon, and so we have limited vendors that will work with us. And then the vendors who do choose to work with us, knowing that it might take 180 days or more for them to be paid, they charge us higher prices. Even for Memorial Field, we had one person respond to that RFP. One company. And so they came in much higher than the bid amount, because again, Mount Vernon has a reputation for not paying. So if I'm going to lend you money or sell you product, I'm going to build into the front end costs the money that I know I'm going to lose on the back end because you pay slow. And that's what's happening. We're paying far more for basic services than we should, because they know that that's the only way they're going to recoup their expenses on the back end.
Now, since we talk about finances, I have to ask this question, and this question is not to satisfy my own curiosity, okay? It's to question that people have asked us to ask you.
Sure.
Mount Vernon is hurting financially in many ways. We have heard that you asked for an increase on
That I
salary,
asked. No, I didn't ask for an increase.
and so did the Comptroller.
I did not ask for an increase.
So can you clarify that, because a lot of people are thinking that you did.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a sitting mayor cannot give themselves a raise, a sitting official. So
But they can ask,
it would have had to happen before I even took office. And so back in November, December, there was discussion that city officials had not received raises in many years. I ran and interviewed for this job knowing what the salary was. It's not a salary that I would want, but it's a salary that I was aware of and I was more than happy to take, period. Okay? So there was a discussion around raises. That is not the process. I can't give myself a raise. The Comptroller said, look, I'm the Comptroller. I was on the City Council. We can put the raises into the budget. The City Council President said, this is not the way it can happen. It has to happen as a part of 2 different local laws have to be passed. There needs to be a referendum done, and there has to be a waiting period. And so that's where the pushback was. I mean, I heard 175 is what I was asking for. No, what the Comptroller had put in the budget was 165. The Comptroller made.
Well, she put it on the budget,
She
not what
put
you
it on the
asked.
budget. So, Danny, can you pass me those over there? The budget, every budget, the 3 budgets, there were several budgets that were worked on, okay? This was Mayor Wallace's initial budget, okay? If you go through here, you'll see that almost every page, I marked questions, concerns, I shared this with the Comptroller, I met with Management Services. Mayor Wallace put out a second budget. Those budgets took into account some of my concerns that I shared with Management Services. I went through this budget with the Comptroller, and she produced out of her office the budget. I put my additions in there, my concerns, some of my subtractions, questions that I had. She produced this budget that had a $1.25 million fund balance and a 1.68% increase, correct? Now look at that. It's important that you look at these budgets. Based on that budget, I took that budget downstairs and I sat with the Comptroller yet again, for many hours, and I said, can we look at these different expenses, these different revenues and positions, and make adjustments again? It was a wonderful process. We were working well together. We were really working well together. She gave me a lot of what I asked for, what I requested, because I just, we need code enforcement officers. We have more fires than any other community around us. We need another deputy chief to deal with fire prevention. We're spending money on overtime. We had 58 structure fires. New Rochelle had 5. That's 12 times almost the amount of structure fires. So if we're dealing better with code enforcement and fire prevention and things like that, we're going to save money on the back end. She understood that. I asked for a chief of staff. You need someone to help me run the city, and so far as dealing with all of the commissioners and all of the departments, she agreed to it. We asked for, as did Mayor Wallace, a 5th lawyer in the Corporation Counsel's office. That was in his budget. It's the same information that was in mine. His budget for the law department is the same budget that I had for the law department. There was no difference. We put in for a compliance officer for grants, $90,000 in the planning department. There's almost a $10 million portfolio in Mt Vernon of grants, but no one was managing them. And we have over $1 million of grant money that is at risk right now, over $1 million that is at risk right now because no one was watching the house. So these are some things that we put in. We put in requests to improve our cybersecurity, our email system, our servers, because that's the digital and the information infrastructure of our community. But yet that infrastructure is terribly depleted. So we needed to stabilize our communications, our basic communication systems here so that we can do day-to-day work. The email servers were up and down. There'd be days where you couldn't necessarily get emails in and out, or even if it's hours, that's still not acceptable for a government. We're not a third world country. We're an urban community in New York, and I could get better email service at home than the city had stable email service.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable. So, with those concerns, she made adjustments. Every blue slip here is her writing. Every blue, and it correlates with what I've asked for here. So she and I sat. We sat and we worked together. And I'm not going to demonize her. It was going really, really well. So that's that, and it produced this budget, which was a 1.8% increase and a $1.5 million fund balance. Once she realized that she could not have her raise, she makes $20,000 less than one of the people in her office. That necessarily shouldn't be. And so that's what the raise was about. Once that could not happen, she removed the fund balance. Why is the fund balance in her budget? Why is it on her paperwork? And 24 hours later, it's gone. The only thing that changed in this budget
was that
her
she
raise.
not get
Her
the
raise, my raise, council's raise, any elected officials. Those raises were taken out because they cannot be done through this process. So then I had to go back and create my own budget. And that's the budget that I presented after the public hearing, and we moved forward with it, and it will move forward to the city council. And if you look, 1.78%
on your budget.
On my budget.
But according to her, what is the percentage?
That is the one. That is the percentage. 1.78%. 1.78%. I decreased some of the revenue. She had $2.5 million that we should get from the water department. The water department is never projected giving us more than $1 million a year. You can't have a $2.5 million projection. I dropped that down $1 million to 1.5 after speaking to the water commissioner. So any hidden tax increases.
Where does she pull these numbers from, Mayor?
This is her own numbers that she's pulling. She criticized, she says, oh, her budget doesn't have information in there for step increases. There's information in there for step increases now.
Now let's move into something else that you ran into.
Absolutely.
Transparency.
Yes.
You promised to be transparent.
Mm-hmm.
Crystal clear, no hidden, nothing.
What's been clipped?
No, I'm not accusing. I'm just
asking.
I haven't run
into any problems, so
no,
I'm trying to understand.
I'm not accusing anything, but the transmission, broadcasting live broadcasting of your meetings, that has been a problem. Okay,
it wasn't done under Mayor Wallace either. So transparency does not mean live broadcasting of meetings through Facebook Live. I think Facebook Live has pretty much been one of the biggest problems that we've had here from Mount Vernon, because people are playing to an audience and not playing to dealing with policy. We don't need people to comment on every second, their facial expressions are terrible, this and this. And that's what was happening with those transmissions more than anything. Our Board of Estimate meetings have been put up on Facebook, but they're being done through YouTube. First of all, they're clearer, they're stable, and it allows us to archive them better than Facebook Live. People can make comments as they read, but live comments, that's not necessary. You don't have to see it live as it's happening. It's up within a few hours. It's not edited, it's not cut, so it's transparent.
But
there's a difference between transparency and reality TV, and I think what we've seen is reality TV, and it has not been healthy for government. So if you can show me...
It might not be healthy to government according to you, but nowadays, it's the raw news that people want.
This is still the raw news. No. It's not edited. It's not edited. But it is not edited. So if it was edited, then you could say it's not the raw news. It is unedited, and it is put up for anyone who wants to see it.
Mayor, the other day we broadcasted an issue that some members of your administration felt that was petty. It wasn't to the citizens of Mount Vernon.
No, most of the citizens of Mount Vernon weren't concerned about it.
Well, you don't even know what I'm going to talk about.
Oh, I know,
but
you followed it.
You already gave me an answer.
You're referring to Mayor Wallace's picture being on the wall. And guess what? I am the one who noticed it missing.
Mayor?
I am the one who, I'm the one who noticed it missing. I think it was down for maybe about an hour. Not everyone was in the hallway during that time, and so you're referring...
So the picture was down?
It was down for about an hour. Mr. Terry might have been in his office, and so by the time the picture was down and seen and someone took a picture, by the time he came downstairs, I'm sure it was back up. But I was leaving the building probably for a meeting at around 3:30, and I noticed that the picture wasn't there. I called DPW Commissioner. I spoke to, at that time, Deputy Clerk Lauren Carter. I said, Lauren, I know there's a filming happening. Did they take the picture down? Why is this picture down? I noticed it. I questioned it, because guess what? I knew that I would be blamed for it.
Well, Mayor, no one blamed you.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm talking about, I don't take responsibility.
I didn't say necessarily you.
I don't take responsibility.
There were other people
I do
who
not
blamed.
take responsibility for what other people say. I take responsibility for what I say and what I do. My topic was, the picture was missing. Daniel Terry came and said that was a lie. The picture was never removed from the wall.
Well, he was not aware that
Well,
the
then
picture was
perhaps you
removed.
don't make a statement without being
Well,
aware.
you know, it was down
Second,
for maybe an hour.
whatever it was.
But it
Mayor?
became, hold on, it became an issue that went on and on and on for like 10 days.
Whatever.
I'm gonna say this, we have much bigger issues to deal with in the city of Mount Vernon than worrying about whether
But
or not,
Mayor,
I mean, the conversation lasted for almost as long
Mayor,
as Andre Wallace was mayor.
You don't decide. You don't decide
No,
on what the
I
people
don't
wants to
care
talk
what the
about.
conversation is.
Neither does Terry. But the problem is this.
Mhm.
I had requested an interview with you, which was granted on that very same day, before I even put up the picture. Once I put the picture, Terry Daniels come on the public and said, your interview with the mayor is canceled.
And where are you sitting right now?
No,
I'm just going to ask you, where are
I
you
am
sitting?
sitting
You're
right here,
sitting right
but-
here in my office right
but
now.
some
with
members
an
of your
interview.
administration are not doing justice. I don't know if
It's
it has.
not justice.
It is,
It
Mayor.
was a
We spoke
reaction,
on your
and
behalf.
we addressed it. And you
Good
were
enough.
sitting here now.
That's it.
You were
Good
sitting
enough.
here. I'm not going to demonize him
No.
for not being aware that the picture was down.
No, but-
I'm not going to demonize him. We have some people
Mayor.
who we are working with,
Mayor.
and he is very good at what he does,
Mayor,
and I'm
I'm
going
not-
to support
I'm
him.
not doubting-
And you're sitting here right now.
Mayor.
So we're not going to make a big story out of what is not a story.
Mayor.
I will not major on the minors.
That's
And
good.
so that might be frustrating for
No,
people
Mayor,
because I will
we
not.
might play with words, and we might say this, and we might say that. But one thing for sure, what happened to me could happen to another. What if a member of your administration had said to another reporter, we're not giving you the interview because we're not liking what you reported about the mayor. That's all I'm saying.
And if there's an issue, just like you have some time with your staff, you'll correct it. Well,
Exactly, and I
Thank
called
you.
Malcolm and he corrected.
so-
No, Mayor,
So if you have an issue with your staff, you correct it. If I have issues with my staff, I'll correct it.
we have to
But
make
I'm
you
not
aware
gonna
of that
throw,
staff.
I'm not gonna throw them under the bus.
Now, Mayor, about Mount Vernon going forward,
Mm-hmm.
what's the plans? What's your next thing? What's your next priority that you want to
Well, our
address?
priority is dealing with fiscal concerns in the Comptroller's office. Our priorities are making sure that we get our audits done. Our priorities are taking care of sewer compliance issues and moving the Mt Vernon Memorial Field project forward. One of our biggest priorities is making sure that we get a budget adopted so that we can send tax notices out and the major revenue for the city of Mount Vernon can come through. So those are some of the priorities. There are a lot of other priorities, but you have my platform that I produced back in June, and you have my newsletter that I produced back in October. I think we have a lot of information out there. We don't have a lot of time left, and so to drill all the way down. But those are some of the pressing priorities. And what I will say is that we have over 150 people who are not being paid, but who are experts in their field and passionate community members that are working across 7 transition teams right now on everything from DPW infrastructure to government finance and operations to economic development to human services to public safety. I think that people in Mount Vernon are very excited. I will expend much more energy on working with people who want to work with Mount Vernon than frustrating myself with people who, regardless of what you do, I put something up on Facebook, I'm not going to audition for people who will never give me the job. There are some people that, regardless of what we do here, are always going to have something to say. And constructive
Nature of the beast.
constructive criticism is fine, and we'll hear constructive criticism, but we're not just going to focus on that all day. We are answering complaints We are dealing with constituent issues, and we are moving Mount Vernon forward, and that's my focus. In the next 2 weeks, I'll be meeting with at least 7 state agencies who will work with us on projects and making sure that we're in compliance and getting our fair share of support. We are working actively every day with the County of Westchester and our electeds on multiple levels. And so I think Mount Vernon is moving forward, and that's where we'll really expend our energy as opposed to being distracted by those who just want to find issues where there are no issues.
I thank you for your time. I have only one more question. You know, because I know you're busy. I know that you have other meetings to go. You have another meeting. The $8 million in bad loans from 3 administrations.
There are not $8 million
They're not,
in bad
because
loans.
that's what they.
I was the planning commissioner years ago.
I think it was before.
It's before. I mean, there are some loans that go back here in Mount Vernon as far as 1999 that have not been collected on.
Any plans to recover?
Well, we started looking at that before, and we're looking to see. One of the problems that happened between 1999 and 2015 is that the legal support in Mount Vernon, a lot of the loans that we gave out were never filed for the with the county clerk, and so it is very hard now to go back and if you don't file closing documents, it's hard for you to go back and recover. And so we are working to find those closing documents for those that exist. We will pursue them for those that don't. We will have to find other means, but one way or the other, we're going to either have to write some of these loans off. These are loans going back to 1999, or if there are filing documents and closing documents that were filed, and we can pursue that, we will. We've already been able to do that on 1 or 2 of them right now, and we're starting to resolve them. So what we can resolve, we will resolve. But I was the planning commissioner. I reviewed many of that paperwork back then, but unfortunately, the legal work around closing documents didn't happen. So,
on that note, we conclude this interview. Thank you to the mayor for taking the time, and mayor, in a few months, then we do one of how am I doing?
Absolutely.
That we can actually analyze, see the things that you have done, see the progress that has been done in your city. So guys, thank you for watching, and thank you to the mayor for taking the time. Till next time.
Take care.